today as usual. Now we have a returning guest. Krupa Patel is here from the Attention Seeker, and we had a great session with her the other day. We were talking about the hero's journey, and we got lots of good insight from that. And today we're going to talk about build your authority online with content. Such an important aspect of being a business owner is to make yourself the expert, right? So, and we do that with content. We're going to find out some tips and tricks on that from Krupa, and we are streaming live on multiple platforms. So I don't know where you're tuning in from, but welcome and thank you for tuning in to Digital Boost. Now, we'd love for you to ask questions. In fact, Krupa even said before the session, I hope people ask lots of questions. So get your questions ready. She's ready. And we're looking forward to having you participate. You can do that by using the comments section, the chat function, the Q&A function on all the different platforms. So feel free. I am going to be jumping from screen to screen and getting your questions out there so that they can get answered, because that's why we have these sessions. Now, we also have great provider offers and competitions that we run at Digital Boost. So if you only tune in live with us on the different platforms and you haven't actually registered, you're missing out. Get yourself registered at digitalboost.co.nz and check out some of the other content we have, but also get access to some of those special offers. It's a really good opportunity for you to get some good deals and bargains, and who doesn't love a bargain? So Krupa, thanks for joining us today. We are just lucky to have you come back.
Oh, sorry. I am turning my video on if it wants to load.
Oh, there we go. Good.
It's gone.
No, there we are. Oh, there you are. Hello.
Here we go. Okay, we've got it.
All right, cool. Now we've already had a comment because we've got Lara's here with us today as well as an attendee, and she said, "Are you sure you want lots of questions?" Because she does always ask lots of questions, and I love that when you jump onto these sessions. So you go for it.
Good. Now, I'm glad.
Yeah, feel free. So I am going to check that everything's running in the back. I'm going to let you drive. So if you want to share a screen, yeah, we'll get into it.
Awesome. I'll just share my screen.
Yeah, I'll just make sure that's working in the know.
It's all good?
Yes.
Screen perfect. Cool. So thanks guys for joining live today. My name is Krupa Patel and I work at the Attention Seeker. So today what we're going to be talking about is how you can build authority online. And you know, we're going to be talking about the word authority, what it means in a digital and an online context, and pretty much why it's important to have. So first, what I want to do is I want to establish what authority is. So authority is defined as power to influence or command thought, opinion, or behavior. The power to influence others, especially because of one's commanding manner or one's recognized knowledge about something. So when you look at the root word, it is octa or author in English, which means promoter. So it's essentially when you are the authority on something. So often people ask, well, why is it important? People have objections towards this, and they think, you know, that I don't want to be an authority figure. And when we think of the word authority, often it's got negative connotations. But really, authority is a good thing. And I'm going to explain why having this is good, especially in an online space. So throughout this little Q&A, I want everyone to keep thinking about their answer to this question. So if I had authority, what are the things I could achieve now that I couldn't before? So this is really powerful because when you take a spin on the word authority and put it into a sentence like this, it really gets your brain thinking, because all we want to do when we put out content is not just, you know, become famous and, you know, everyone knows us, but we're trying to impact change. And it doesn't have to be, you know, big worldly changes, you know, like government level, whatever. It can just be little things in your own industry or in your own little network. So what we're going to deep dive into today is what authority helps you build. So there's 3 things that I think authority can help us build. And those 3 things are trust, reputation, and influence. Oops, sorry. Cool. So trust, right? This is a really big one. This is one that we always have at the back of our mind, I guess. It's not always at the forefront, and we're not consciously always trying to gain trust through our network, but it's what we're doing. It's just by the actions we're doing, the things we're saying, the relationships we're building. So trust is easily built when you have some sort of authority. It almost gives you a leg to stand on. And when people trust you, you're able to create shareable and purposeful content. So if we think of Jacinda Ardern, right? She's led our nation through a pandemic. And again, she's working on doing that now. And I think even just personally speaking, if I think a couple of years back and I think of, who are great leaders, she may have not been on, at the top of my list. And that's not because, there's anything against her, but there's just heaps of other people that I think about in my industry who I feel like are great leaders. But now when I sit here and I'm like, who's someone who has built trust over the years and who has made, huge amounts of change? And I think of her, and I think now that the nation thinks of her like that because she's done it once. And, we just trust that if we follow what she says, because she's the authority figure, she will do it again. So that's just like a real baseline sort of understanding of trust in that aspect. And the second thing is reputation. So authority is a piece of your reputation. So your reputation is your brand. It's who you are. And you can often be known as a thought leader when you have some sort of authority. So this is something we talk a lot about in our company and workshops that we run, is the whole brand versus authority saga. It's all the same. Your brand is nothing without you, and it's because it's who you are. So, for example, and this is quite eye-opening for a lot of people when we put it into perspective. So when you've got a business, you've built authority, you've built trust by the people who, support you in that business. They buy your product, your service, they come to you for consultations, whatever it may be. But when you step away from that business or you sell it, the business doesn't end, right? The business keeps going. It goes on, but so do you. And you go on because you've built up your reputation for yourself. You've built up a brand that now, even if you're not working at XYZ, you can go on and start this new little chapter. And that audience that you've built, the authority that you've commanded over the past couple of years, it's there, it's stuck with those people, and they will just come along with you onto the next part of your journey. And then the third thing is influence. Now, this is a word that I love, and it's because everyone has a different meaning of what influence is. So influence in this sort of context is gaining authority on something. So for example, like, let's say you go to the doctors, right? You blindly trust them when you're sick because you know that they have the knowledge, they've got the expertise, and they've got the authority to treat you. It's the same as a pilot. So we get on a plane, we don't even know who the pilot is until we hear them on the intercom, and we hear him or her over the intercom, and we just believe that, they're going to get us to our destination. We're not going to crash and burn in this aircraft. But being a true authority in your industry means being an influencer and associating with other influencers and contributing to whatever the greater community you find yourself in is. And by influencer, I don't mean, being a brand ambassador or an influencer in the more popular sense, like on Instagram, but I mean someone who has influence over a group of people or over a community. And you need to be able to support the people within your industry. You want to be able to help them, and you want to engage with them on social channels genuinely. And what this is going to help you do is this is going to help you gain authority. And if you are an authority on a subject, you're gaining trust and confidence of your visitors and your readers. So the people who are visiting your LinkedIn profile, your Instagram page, your blog, your website, whatever it may be, attending your webinars, things like that. And I truly believe that you can't gain authority by yourself. You have to put in the hard yards. You have to support the people who are in your industry, and you have to bring each other up, because at the end of the day, we're trying to be authority figures in an industry that's already being created. It's not something new. Often a lot of us are not, groundbreaking and creating all these brand new things and industries and products that no one has ever seen, but we're already in a space that's familiar. So it's really important to, just make sure that you are influencing your community, yes, by yourself, but also influence them with the good things that you're learning from other people. So I guess why authority is important when posting online or in a digital context. So when you're posting online, you're being vulnerable. So for some reason, humans are just drawn to vulnerability. It's easier to connect with people when they can see that you're not some person putting yourself on this pedestal, but you're actually just like everybody else, except you have something more to offer on a particular subject. And the reason that I bring up vulnerability, and I feel like I think I talked about this in the Hero's Journey episode 2, and it's because there's a lot of times where you think, when you're just looking at people of influence and people of authority, that you just see all of the good things, often, that all the achievements, all of the success. But actually, behind all of that success and those achievements, there's points in those people's lives, because yes, they are human, they're just like you and me. And there's points in their life where they have failed. And often those points are the most important to share, and those stories are the most important to share. And this is because people will be able to relate with you if you do this. And I feel that a lot of the time people don't want to share their failures because you can seem weak, you can seem vulnerable, but really if you structure it in a way that can be a learning for somebody, you're amping up your authority, you're amping up your reputation, and you're amping up the trust between yourself and that person. The barrier is, lowering itself, because they're like, okay, cool. Well, actually, this person is really honest. They're genuine, and they are telling me the truth. So when you are an authority figure, and you've got the ability to socially influence through your actions and words, this means you hold a great deal of trust in front of your audience and your community. And everyone wants to be an authority. Everyone wants to be acknowledged for the knowledge that they have. And everyone essentially, if we look at it in a business perspective, wants the increased rankings and traffic that comes when your network sees you as an authoritative resource. So we know why. We've kind of outlined why it's important, but I really want to hone in on how to do this, right? It's not easy. It's not something that can just be achieved because I'm like, yeah, snap my fingers and I want to be an authority figure. So the first thing is constantly posting about your core messages. Now, this needs to be broken into two things: constantly posting and your core messages. Constantly posting is key, absolutely essential when you're rolling out a content plan. Specifically for LinkedIn, the way it works is the more you post, the more you comment on people's posts, the more you engage, the more other people will see your posts and your content. And that's just how LinkedIn works. I think that's how a lot of other platforms work. I know that's how Instagram feeds work as well. But you just need to make sure that you consistently do this. And the reason you do this is because, again, authority isn't built overnight. It's not built through one post, or one blog article, one how-to video. It's actually built and built and built and built and built until it becomes this thing that you've got. And it's kind of like this power that you build over time. And so if we sum that up, it's get active in your online community. And this just goes back to the point we were talking about influence. And, by posting consistently on social media, you will be able to build up a quality audience. And that's what you want. You don't just want anybody and everybody to see your post. You want the people to see your post who are really going to be impacted by this, who are going to take something away from this, who are going to reach out to you and see you and use you as a resource. Excuse me. And then the second part to that was core messaging. So this is something that us at the Attention Seeker have internally been working on for the past couple of weeks now. And core messaging is a key part of creating content. So when you have a few clear messages that are key to who you are, the subject that you are posting about, and the knowledge that you want to share, and then you amp this up and you consistently keep posting, people will start to gauge a better understanding of you, your content, and the authority that you have started to create for yourself. So I guess that was the first sort of thing. And then the second thing is being transparent and keeping authenticity while you're posting. So authenticity, am I right? Like, as humans, we love this word, and I just don't know why we do, but anytime somebody's like, oh, that's authentic, we need to maintain authenticity, something just kind of starts ticking in our brains, and we just start thinking about all the things that we've put online, and we're like, is this authentic? Is this true to who I am? And that's great. That's what the word is there for, in my opinion. And so why being transparent is important? It's because it all goes back to building trust and talking about content and subject matter that you know inside and out. That's what's going to help you build authority online. Now, we talked about core messaging just before, and people often ask, how can I, what is core messaging? And it's actually not that hard to establish what your core messaging is. So the way to do it is you need to think about, when I think about my journey, when I go through my timeline, what are the key themes that keep coming up? What are the key topics that I keep talking about? And why am I talking about these? And often when you sit down and think about it, you'll be like, okay, well, I'm always talking about technology. I'm always talking about social media and brand. I'm always talking about my family and how they've taught me a lot of lessons. I'm always talking about XYZ. And it's really important to try focus in on a couple of core messages. You don't really want to have, 8, 9, 10 messages going out at once to the same network. You really want to be the subject matter expert in just a couple of these first. So I guess the way to do this is, once you've established your core messages, you want to focus on storytelling. So humans understand storytelling. Using structure when crafting posts is a good way to get people to understand your message. So the way that we've been doing it recently is, you need to set a premise, explain the turbulence that's kind of happened in that situation, and then show the audience the solution. And by doing it like this, what you've got is you've built out a little story that people can read, and they say, okay, so this was the premise. And then, oh, wait, actually they faced these kind of issues. And wait, this is how they got out of that little hiccup, or this is how they got over that bump. And when you do this, you're not leaving the audience hanging. You're going back to, being the authority on a subject matter, and you're showing them a way out, and you're becoming a resource, right? They can come to you, they can read your post, they can read your blog or listen to your video, and they will come away from it with a learning of some sort. And And then I guess the fourth thing is be a resource. So when people think of authority, often they think about government and they think of people in power positions. But the way that I think of it is that you are a resource for somebody. And again, I just want to reiterate that you don't have to be a person in a leadership role or a powerful position. You just need to be a person passionate about what you're talking about, but also a person who knows the facts. So you want to be a place that people come to for advice. And once people start coming to you for advice on topics that you've been talking about, that's proof that your core messages are working. It's capturing people's attention, and they're starting to see you in a new light. They're starting to see you for more than somebody who's always popping up on their LinkedIn. They're starting to see you as somebody of value. And value is a great way to describe what it feels like when you've got authority, because when all we want is people to accept us, hear us, and to trust us and see that what we're putting out there has been really thought out and thought through. And so, you know, it goes back to the trust thing as well, because people won't trust someone who came from nowhere, and people won't trust someone who don't have strong credentials, right? So a background. And in all of your content, you need to show your knowledge of a subject. And the way that you can do this is through many, many different forms. So this can be through your writing, your captions, academic backgrounds, videos you make, ebooks you create, your experience, just the way that you tell stories. It doesn't have to be all of these things, but essentially whichever one fits. And now, I guess the crux of it. So I love this because it really sums up what I'm trying to say. And it says the smartest content creators don't care about sounding smart. So this whole time I've been harping on about being a subject matter expert, essentially, right, to gain authority. But you don't need to sound smart. You just need to know what you're talking about. So it's all about the clarity. Sometimes people think that authority is gained by confusing language, overcomplicating things, over-explaining, and it often ends up making no sense. And remember that authorities are resources, and your usefulness will be short-lived if your readers and your audience and your viewers don't actually understand what you're saying. So I think that when you try to wrap all of this up in a tidy little bow, the last component is your content unique? And unless you've got like, you know, a huge content creation staff with, you know, just like a wide array of subject matter expertise, and, you know, focus your content creation efforts on a few topics that everybody knows about, it's really hard. It's actually really hard to do that, I should say. So it's better to do a deep dive by yourself or with your team into a small handful of topics and speak generically about all of those other topics under the sun. Because when you deep dive into your core messages and you deep dive into 3 or 4 subjects, you'll really be able to gain authority. But if you try and, you know, choose 10 or 12 subjects, it's really hard for a lot of people to know everything about those. So I would say that, you know, your audience may be smaller, but they'll reap more benefits from your content if you take that route. And, you know, once you've built up a good foundation with your content, you can extend your subject matter, and your subject matter should essentially grow with your audience. Because right now you might just have people in, like, for example, I might just have people in design and in marketing, and they, you know, they like coming to my page, they like coming to me for advice or want to hear my stories. But as I keep going and as I keep growing my online presence, what's going to happen is hopefully the goal is that your community gets bigger, your audience gets bigger, and you're getting people from all sorts of different industries, all walks of life, all different job types. And you're going to have to keep on top of that, because if you want to keep the authority going, you want to keep it building, you're going to need to make sure that the content you put out changes over time. You can't keep posting about the same stuff, because it might not be applicable to the new people that have come to your platform. And when you think, when people think of authority, they're thinking of high quality content, relevant, reliable, helpful information, genuine engagement, and identifiable branding. So when people come to you, they want to, when you're on someone's newsfeed, it's the subject matter, I guess the visual shouldn't just have to be you for people to realize that this is your post. The way you tell your stories, the way that you speak, the captions that you're putting, with the visuals, that should automatically be like, oh yeah, that's, Krupa's post, or that's XYZ's post. And that comes over time, and a good thing that, we've been focusing on, which might be helpful to everybody creating content, is that come up with your core message. So, family, and then come up with a headline. And now the headline needs to be something that will tell people what the post is going to be about to, capture their attention. And then have a subheading. And now the subheading just needs to be an extension of the heading. Whereas if someone reads those 2 lines, they're hooked, but also they know exactly what the rest of the post is going to be like. Because what comes after the subheading is, a challenge. So you put like an example of something that happened, something that you had to overcome, or whatever it may be, good or bad. The challenge always doesn't have to be something that was hard and something that was negative. And then you put the solution. And when you've put the solution, what you've done is you've come full circle, and you've essentially told someone how to overcome the situation that you were in. And everyone will take that message differently. And then at the end of that, what we like to do to get that engagement, to get those people commenting, and to get your post coming up all the time, you want to ask a question at the end of that post. You want to pretty much, your headline, you want to reiterate. So if I say, failure is actually really good for you, it's a way that you learn, then at the end I could put something like, have you ever felt like this? Or, leave them with an open-ended question, leave your audience with a question that they can go and think about. And not everybody will like to comment on your post. This is a little bit off track, but they won't always want to comment on your post. And again, it just comes back to, they might not want to be vulnerable in an open forum, but at least it gives them something to think about when they've gone away. And then I guess, if you're telling your story properly and provide great value to your audience, people will start to see you as a thought leader in your space, and you will be able to build up that reputation. You will be able to build up that trust, and you will be able to have more of an influence on that online community. And so I guess the main thing to take away from this is that authority isn't built overnight, and that authority is actually a really positive thing, and that we all want to make change. And even if that change is small, you still need some sort of pull. You need to have a leg up, and not a leg up on somebody else, but just a leg up in the industry, in the subject that you're talking about. And, slowly, you will be able to make that change. You will be able to build that audience that you've been longing for, or you will just be able to start putting out really high quality content that people will find useful, and that people will feel comfortable coming to you as a resource. So I hope that was helpful. I think there's a couple of questions in the chat. If I just...
Hello, there are. There's questions all over. Okay, so okay, first question: how do you tailor content to the different platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook? So you kind of talked about that, but I guess would you suggest making the content slightly different for each platform? Is probably and what are the considerations that go into that?
Yeah, so that's a great question. And all three platforms are actually really different. So the way that Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram work, they've all got different algorithms. They've all got different audiences. Whereas if we look at LinkedIn specifically, you find more of your professionals on there. You find people in kind of the workplace on LinkedIn. So the content that they're after is slightly different than Facebook, because Facebook has a lot more of your friends, your family. You're not always connected with your work colleagues and people in your industry, just because it's more of a social platform, I guess. Whereas LinkedIn is more of a professional / social network. And then Instagram is in between, because people tend to successfully do a lot of business on Instagram. And so what we like to do is we like to focus on personal branding first. And I think that's a good way, that's a good structure to keep when you're posting on all three platforms, because LinkedIn, you can actually write a lot more in your caption and get a lot more information across. Whereas in Instagram, you have to shorten it. You have to be a bit snappy. So I would suggest maybe using stories or Instagram TV if you actually want to really put some heart into what you're talking about. So it might not be so much structure. It might just be thinking about the way that you present the content.
Yeah, I like that, because if you think about it on Instagram and stuff, everybody loves reels, everybody loves stories.
Exactly.
IGTV is a really valuable tool because you can have hours of content there.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that's a way for people to really get to know you, because it's such an image-based site. Yeah, so that's great. Whereas you don't really post a lot of videos on. Well, I don't see it a lot on LinkedIn. I don't see a lot of videos. And you could always do the same kind of video content that you do on Facebook or on Instagram on your Facebook. You can push it.
Exactly. And with LinkedIn, if you want to post videos, I would say keep them to 30 seconds to 2 minutes. Yeah. After that, people won't be engaging. They allow up to 10 minutes. But in our experience, nothing over 2 minutes kind of captures the audience. So
I'm one of the, I hate to admit I'm one of those people.
I'm one of those people too.
Like I start to get like, okay, this is talking.
That's right. And always use captions. If you're posting videos, always use captions, because a lot of the time people don't put on sound and they just like to read, like watch you, but they're reading. So just keep that in mind as well.
Absolutely. Great point. So important to have captions on your videos. So we've got a few questions. Laura's, but she's banking them in there. We've got a novel as well. No, I'm just kidding. So I feel like we're best friends at this point, because she does so many sessions. It's quite funny. Okay. So do you have an outline for the structure that you use to create this process? So your process that you have talked about here, do you have like a these are the dot points. This is what I put here, and then this comes, and
Correct. We do. And I think we have a session where I'll take you guys through that. So definitely join that session. But what it is what we do. The easiest way, I guess, to create content is you really want to get one person with you to have a conversation with. And the reason you want to do this is because when you sit there by yourself and you start to think of your journey, you're going to self-criticize a lot, and you're going to think that this is actually not interesting. There's no learnings in here. But if you bring in a fresh set of eyes and ears, they will be like, wait, no, hold on, go back to that, because actually I think people will find a lot of value in that little story that you are making redundant. And so for me, I think what we do is we always buddy up in our teams or with our clients. And we go through and we write down like 100 key points from the entire conversation. And then what we do is we go back and we're like, okay, this story sounded really interesting. What year did this happen in? What month did this happen in? And what were your key learnings here? And the important thing about doing this is that you will start to extract really good messages throughout this. So if you want an actual physical structure, just have one column for ideas, one column for idea development, and then one column for core message. And the reason that you have to have your core message is because every story or every post that you push, you want to make sure that you're always going back to those messages that you want to be known for. And then you want to go away and then start developing the heading, the subheading, the challenge, the solution. And just by doing one at a time, it's going to be way less overwhelming than just jumping into LinkedIn and going create post and starting to type something, because it's just not going to have that storytelling. It's not going to have that structure. So try it this way, and I think you'll have a little bit more success.
Yeah. And, I really love that you said that, because I think that that's when we start to get exhausted, is when we're trying to do one post at a time. And we're just like, okay, I've got a post for today. What am I going to write for today? Like
that's right.
Set aside some creative time and let your brain actually go into that mode. It's like, it's an actual thing that transient frontality or transient frontality type of something like that. And it's an actual, the brain pathways, the way that you think actually changes when you go into that creative space. Yeah. And so you can just get them all pumped out, do a whole bunch. And so would you suggest like looking back on your life or something? Is that what we're doing looking back on our company, looking back on our work experience?
Correct.
Is that what we're reflecting on?
Correct. And like what we've done is obviously we went through the hero's journey, right? But then what we've soon realized is that the next step that we just take with that hero's journey is we go into each of those 12 steps, and then we come up with each step has, with the mentors, you've got at least 5-10 mentors some people have, and you can't condense that in one post. So the way that you do it is you do look back on your life, and you really just deep dive into where did you start and where are you now, and how did you end up there. So it doesn't have to be, from university and this and that, but I guess maybe just your first job or a real turning point in your career. And then you look back and you go, well, I had all of these milestones, I had all of these setbacks, and I think that if I dissect them, there'll be even more and more and more. And some of the posts will just be little anecdotes. Just because LinkedIn gives you 1,300 characters, you don't have to use them all. And you just might need to have little anecdotes that people can just think, oh yeah, that sounds like me. Because when people can relate to what you're saying, you've pretty much achieved your goal.
We talk a lot about pillars, and maybe that's kind of what you're getting at here. This would be probably one of your pillars, wouldn't it be? Your journey,
correct?
Who you are, and then possibly because I guess, like, would you say you wouldn't always be posting on that kind of thing? Would you also post on some of your other core values, like
Yes,
but you want it to be a story though, each one?
Yeah, we tend to lean towards storytelling, and the starting for that is going through your timeline and going through your journey. And only when you've gone through your journey is you can see all the key messages, your content pillars, or your core messages, as we like to call them. Because yes, you'll have family, you'll have business, you'll have brand, networking, all of these things are core messages for me. But I link them back to real life things that have happened. And that's where the relatability comes in for your audience. Yeah.
And I think we've got like a really good question to kind of link this to. So there was a question that, are you able to show us an example of a similar post? So do you think you could share screen? Because I know you've got lots on LinkedIn, just like give an example, even from just the attention seeker would be fine as well. Because I think that that's a good example as well.
Let me just jump onto LinkedIn. I can share Stanley's with you guys. The entire team is working on this right now, so we're all actually going through and doing our core messages with each other, and we're coming up with our content. So hopefully in the coming weeks you'll be able to see all of us actually doing what Stanley's doing, which would be really good. Okay, so just open up.
And so
sorry.
While you're opening that up, can I ask you a question, or do you want total focus? Okay.
No, you're right.
It's an easy one, so I think you'll be all right to do both. When you say post constantly, how often are you talking about?
So we think that posting daily is essential. It's crucial. It's what we tell our clients. And a lot of people are like, what? You guys are crazy. There's no way we can post every day, and there's no way that we have enough stories to tell. Everyone has enough stories. That's the bottom line. Everyone always has stuff to talk about. Once you get someone into the right conversation, and once you ask the right questions, things will just start to flow. Clients often can't stop talking because we've asked all the right questions. So just do that with yourself, do that with your team or with your family, a buddy, whoever it is, and try get to at least posting 3 times a week. And the reason you want to do this is because if you're trying to gain authority, you're trying to build an audience, the audience won't come if it's once a week, once every 2 weeks. That's just the reality, right? There's like no science behind it. It's just that's the facts. So definitely 3 to 5 times a week.
Yeah, that's great. And and if you're taking into account those pillars, like that idea of like maybe one of your focuses is like what Stanley likes to do is talk about his mentors. Like, so he'll have like a post about somebody who's really influenced him or, something like that. Then like his next post might be about, mental health with his team, like what do people think? It might be like a question about like, what do people, what's your opinion on this subject regarding like working conditions or something like that? I don't know if that's really one of his pillars, but like I do see those posts and they're quite engaging. Everybody will be like, oh, I think this,
That's right. Yeah. And you do need to focus on you, because like if you have just one thing you're talking about, you have to really be able to split that one thing up into like 10 different things, right? So you're not just repeating yourself. Your core message is always the same, but the content can't be the same. So what we do is we try to pick at least 3 different things, like pillars. So he talks about his mentors, he talks about team, and then he talks about he talks a lot about brand and reputation. So then each day we kind of switch. It's always a different thing. So the underlying message is the same, but the content is not the same. And I'll show you.
Like the way that he formats it is always the same. It's one of his posts. You don't even have to see the imagery, but
I'll just try find one here. So technology, we've kind of realized that Stanley loves technology. And this goes back to, talking about how core messages don't have to be deep and meaningful. They can just be things that you love. So he's, we've got all of our tech that turned up to his office, and he just made a post about that. And people kind of just 24 comments. And it's just because people also love tech. Yeah. And then what we do is, morning, we've started to do morning walks, and we did it like 1 week or 2 weeks, and the lockdown happened, and just sharing little anecdotes like this. Like there's nothing deep and meaningful about this post, the screenshot of all of us on FaceTime walking around, but the amount of engagement it gets is really quite good, because we're talking about team and we're talking about how we're coping and how our team is adjusting. So there's heaps of things, like obviously you can post podcasts, and then we've got articles. So again, branding, we're talking about branding. He talks a lot about networking. And then this is a really good post. So the headline is really catchy. So it's going to stop anybody in their tracks. That says, stop making excuses for yourself. And I'm sure everyone will be like, I do that all the time. I'm constantly doing that. And then you go in and you read. And what he's done is he's gone and he's asked questions throughout this post. And he's tagged people, and he's given credit where credit is due. So that's a really big thing as well that we love to tell people, is that don't just always take credit, give credit where credit is due. And what that's going to do is, I guess, in a numbers point of view, is people, the audience of the person you've tagged is also going to see your post, which is just great numbers wise. But it's also going to give you credibility, because it shows that you're genuine. It shows that you have no problem in accepting that somebody has helped you get to where you are. So that's just a real good sort of habit to keep into, is that just give credit where credit is due. And the way that the posts are structured, it's really easy to digest. So you can see it's been broken down into small little paragraphs and sentences. And at the end, it's gone back to the headline. So the headline was, stop making excuses for yourself. And then the conclusion is, stop making excuses for yourself. Take it one step at a time and start breaking down the self-imposed limitations. And ideally what he's done is he summed up that entire post so that when you scroll away from this, you're like, well, actually, you've got something to think about. That's a good way. Sorry, my calendar, I've got another meeting at 11. But yeah, so this is a really good way to structure a post. And it's using the core messages, it's using engaging questions, it's tagging people, it's making acknowledgements where they are necessary. So really the image doesn't matter. And if you can see, 119 likes and 20 comments, like that's outrageous for LinkedIn.
Yeah. So hold on, we've got more questions. So that's cool. So we've got, I'm going to go down here. In terms of post creativity, would you do the same for every business? Personally, I work alongside physios. So I think physios, you have so much content with physios.
Yeah.
You could do people's journeys. You could talk about like their success stories of seeing like really positive outcomes. I mean, in itself, like when people are injured and then get well, right? It's like, that's the whole story. And you can do that without having to identify those patients. You can still maintain patient confidentiality while probably talking to some of the real cool things that you've seen. Could talk about advancements in your industry probably as well.
Exactly. And I think with every industry is different, and all the content across all industries is always different. But the thing that's consistent and that links everybody together is the messaging. Mm-hmm. So messaging would be, I guess, would be your expertise in the area, so the advancements would be one sort of pillar. The customers, the clientele, that's what's making your business run. So, you might not have a team, but you can talk about your clients. You can talk about the success stories that they've had. And again, if you've got the privacy rules and things where you can't share, photos of them, just use stock imagery. It's okay, because it's really not about the visual. It's about what you're sharing and the story of how you have helped this person get to full capacity again, or whatever it may be. So yes and no, every industry is kind of the same, but also really different. And it's just aligned by all of the messages and the values that you want to share.
So we've got a good question here. It says, how do you give yourself confidence to put the content post on either of these platforms where you see much more qualified people in your own industry and you are yourself very new to the industry?
Don't have imposter syndrome. That's a great question. And you're not an imposter. You are a person, a whole person who is where they belong, and rightfully so. You've done all the hard yards. You may be new to the industry, but just remember that the person that you're looking up to, or the person that you're saying has a lot more experience, was exactly in your shoes. And I had this same sort of issue. I was, I obviously am the social media and content manager, so I have to put out content for myself as well. And I found it so hard because, I'm not shy. I don't mind putting up stories and Instagram pictures, all that sort of stuff. I'm happy to share. But when it came to LinkedIn, I was like, there's all these people who are corporates and CEOs and VPs of companies. And, I'm just this new sort of like social media person. And I felt really incapable and not confident, and I didn't want to post. But what I did was I just sat down and I was like, what am I putting out there? And I thought about what are the messages that I want to share. Why am I sharing it? Well, I'm sharing it because it's important to me. And I think that there are going to be at least 10 other people who feel the same way as me. Not 100, but there might be 10 people who feel exactly the same way that I'm feeling right now. So what am I going to do? I'm just going to embrace the fact that I'm the new person on the block and that I'm just the new person posting content. And if people don't see it and people don't react to it, it's not going to change that I still care about the opinion or the learning that I've put out there. So just like back yourself, because people will relate to it, and you'll just automatically get that confidence once you start to see people responding. And it's not a vanity thing. Don't think of it as like it's anything to do with vanity. It's definitely not. Everyone needs a confidence boost and everyone needs that little push. But just stay true to who you are, and remember that the CEOs, the VPs, all of those experienced people are humans as well. So just like don't be afraid. Don't make a barrier there where there doesn't need to be.
Yeah. And I think that, okay, so this ties into that question, but it has a slightly different twist. So, it's quite long. So you might want to, oh, okay. So it completely answered your question. Okay, great. But I think that I kind of felt like that was going to answer it. So good. I'm glad that you're happy with that answer. Yeah. So we got through those questions.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Yeah, great. Such great advice. I have a major imposter syndrome when it comes to posting my thoughts on LinkedIn. Look, I totally get that. I think we all do. I mean, I guess like growing up, like knowing that there's so much out there and there's so many people out there that have been out there for so long, exactly what the person said. It's like, how can I put something out there when I'm the new guy, and but what I think is that, yeah, I mean, shoot, we just got to do it, don't we? We just got to put it out there and know that your voice has value. I love that. I love how we're finishing this session, actually. It's a great thing. Great way to finish. Your voice has
value. 100%, 110%, like it does. Don't be afraid and tag us. If you're scared, just tag us.
Yeah, totally. Tag me. I tell people this all the time. Tag me. I love to see people's journeys and help. I'm like that person on the team that's there, like supporting everyone else. I don't kick the goal. I'm the one who like helps other people kick goals. Yeah. I'll help you kick some goals.
100% too.
So there's a couple of things here. How do you deal with people who challenge your opinion, but also seem gracious, even if the person is rude and possibly wrong? But they don't seem, okay. How do you deal with people who challenge your opinion and still remain like gracious,
Yeah. Okay. So there's two things. There will be people who troll you. That still happens on LinkedIn. It is real and it sucks, but there are people who just live to do that. Yeah. And then there are people who challenge you in a really constructive, in a really good way. And what you have to do is you have to be aware and you have to be prepared that as soon as you hit post, the chances of someone, butting heads with you, someone challenging your opinion is going to be there. And so what you have to do is you have to really take on what they say, go away, think about it. Don't just respond straight away. What they'll do, you don't want to stir things. And you just want to make sure that you respond in a way that stays true to who you are. Because you've put the opinion out there, but don't back away. If someone's like, well, actually, you know what, Krupa, that's, you said this, but I can't agree in X, Y, Z. Well, you don't cave. Don't, just let go of all of your values, your core message that you're putting out there, but just find a constructive way to respond to them. But my main sort of advice would be step away, think about it, speak to some people about it, and then come back and respond.
Okay, cool. Now we've got some questions here on YouTube, so I'm going to put them out there. So one says, hi, Krupa, with core messages, you mentioned family, personal. Is it best to focus on those core messages rather than on your products? Where's the balance? Is there a balance to be upheld?
Yes, there is balance needed. But what we think about is your product and your service and your business is nothing without you. So your values and your personal brand come first. So if family is something that's really important to you, it's that my entire content plan, pretty much 80% of it is riding on my family, and that's my core message. And it's not that I'm just going to keep talking about my mum and dad, but it's going to be all of the things that they've helped me overcome, all the learnings that they've taught me to get where I am. And then my product and service will come in. So for example, I have a cupcake business. And so when I talk about that, I'm talking about all the things that my parents have taught me in growing up that I've applied to my business and in how I've applied it to my business. So I'm not just pushing cupcakes, or I'm not just pushing LinkedIn marketing. I'm actually bringing that in at like a 10% sort of volume and amping up family 90%, if that makes sense. So If you are in a product and service-based business, though, you at the end of the day have to make sales as well. So definitely do plugins where you can, and definitely do post like once a week or so, like, hey, this is our new flavor of the month, whatever it may be. Definitely post about it. And not everything has to have a deeper meaning. There is a balance, but I would say just focus on your personal sort of messaging and your personal journey first, at least for 3 to 6 months, to really just build that community and get people to know who you are, because you can step away from the business and still have that brand.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so there's a couple more. So I'm going to give you this one, and then I'll grab the other one from YouTube. So this one is, any recommended apps for scheduled posting? I've got a few of those, and you probably do too.
Yeah, so there's a couple out there, to be honest, but you just really need a platform that is inexpensive, that can you just drag in your imagery, copy paste your content and schedule it. You don't need something super fancy. Like, you don't need to pay a lot of money for Hootsuite. If you're a sole trader, it's quite expensive. We use something called Publer. So Publer. It's like a one-time lifetime payment of like $200 or something like that.
What was it? Publer. Publer.
Yeah.
It's in the chat, everyone.
Yeah, and it's a one-time payment. It's like $200 or $300, something like that. And you use it for lifetime. Can you tag people in that? So you can tag, I believe, on LinkedIn. I haven't tried Instagram, but you can add, you can add links and comments, and you can schedule the comments to come out later. There's like all sorts of things you can do. But
that's cool.
You can't put video in it. That's the only thing about Publer, is you can't schedule videos for LinkedIn. But that's a good one. I know Planoli is quite good. Hootsuite, of course, is good.
What was it? Planoli,
I think it is.
Oh, Planoli. I don't know how to spell that, but I'm putting it in the chat. So I popped a couple in there. There's Skedsocial, if you want something for social media, like I mean for like posting stories, you can use Skedsocial, and because you can't do that in a lot of other things. There's Later, but you do, if you want to be able to tag people, you got to get a paid account. There's a free version of Later, but you can't tag with it. So if tagging is pretty important. So kind of Planoli, Hootsuite, Publer. We do have one more question, but think about that for a second. We'll get this question because it's a really good question. It says, can you give an example for asking the right questions to get the stories flowing? Yeah, I wanted to know that too.
Sorry, what was the question? I was just typing in.
That's okay. The question was, can you give an example of asking the right question to get the stories flowing? You know how you were talking about with your clients, you ask all these questions. Can you give us a couple of examples of those questions?
Okay, so it's super annoying, but you just have to ask why. And it's so simple. But if someone says, I was struggling to look for a job, and then I just started applying for heaps of jobs, and you ask why, and they'll say, well, because I needed income. Yeah, but why did you need income? And it's just that game of, are we there yet? It's very similar to that. We just ask, why did you do this? And hang on, wait, why did you skip over that point? And you just have to be on high alert the entire time. And what we do is we often find that once we've asked enough whys, we just have to sit back and listen. And I guess it just goes back to making sure that you're, again, on high alert. And if you feel like the person you're having a conversation is downplaying something, then you pause them and you say, wait, hold on, actually tell me more about this. Don't skip over it. Tell me more about it. And then chances are that they will become vulnerable and they'll just open up, and it'll be hard to get them to stop talking. But also we like to ask them questions such as, are there any people who have influenced you in your life? Are there any mentors that you've had along the way? Have you ever found yourself in a situation where you didn't know what to do? Or have you, what's one milestone you've had in your life that's impacted all the things that came after it? And often people have more than one, which opens up another can of worms where they say, well, actually, I had this, and I had this. So there's a lot of prompting questions like that, but they all tend to start with why and how, because you want to know the solution as well.
Would you start, if you were doing it for your business, would you start like when you first like even began studying or something like that? Or why did you go on, how did you get started on this kind of journey of what you're doing?
Yeah, like why did you decide to study, graphic design at university? Okay, cool. So then what did you think your job would be after that? Or why didn't you think you wanted to be a Mac op? Why would you study design if you didn't want to sit behind a computer all day? Chances are people will come up in different reasons that they studied. Like I did graphic design for 4 years, even though I knew I didn't want to be a Mac op. So, then it stemmed into my love for XYZ. And so you just need to go, that's the client's responsibility for them to take you to a starting point that they think is crucial in their life. And then you can just keep building on that until today. And if the client is finding it really hard to pick a starting point, work backwards. Say, okay, cool, you are here now. What were you doing before this?
So and you can do this with yourselves,
correct.
Like we can just sit down there and go, okay, I'm going to spend 30 minutes or however long. And I'm just going to ask myself, I'm just going to go through my whole life and really pick it apart.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. We'll get lots of insight from that, I'm sure. Probably more than some of it maybe more than we want to remember.
Exactly.
But hey, look, it's all good. This has been a fantastic session as usual, Krupa. Thank you so much.
Thanks everyone for the questions.
Yeah, great questions and coming in from everywhere. I have kind of gone back and forth and checked, and I think we are all good. We've answered every question that is out there that I can see. And and we're ready to finish up. Thank you for today. Brilliant information and one of the most important personal barrier removal sessions for me. Reminds me to keep moving forward back to my values and pillars and why I started this journey. Look, thanks so much for joining us again, Laura. Love it when you come on. Can you give us tips about hashtags? Oh, Monica, we are going to do a session on Facebook and Instagram kind of marketing. It doesn't apply as much to LinkedIn. And like probably that's a whole other kettle of fish there, but you can actually get apps like hashtag, like if you Google like hashtags for this, it will give you a whole bunch of a list of some of the most popular hashtags, but we have actually done some sessions with Facebook and Instagram, and we've touched on that, and we've got some more coming up. So have a look at the schedule because we're going to be doing some sessions really soon, I think, with Andrea Bosey, and he's going to be talking about marketing and stuff like that. We can kind of touch on it there. I think that'd be best. It says, thank you so much. Can we have a recording of the session? Yep, no worries. Because you joined us through here, you should receive it in a thank you for attending email within the next 24 hours. And you can always find them on the Digital Boost main dashboard in the in case you missed it section. There's all the sessions we've run today. Thank you, lady. You're very welcome. Have a wonderful day. Thanks for all those. Thank you guys. So lovely. Yeah, ka kite, everyone. Have a wonderful day.
Bye.